Brothers and sisters, we would like to welcome you to our Saturday session. So, welcome from wherever you are joining us from. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This week, we delve into the critical topic coordinating defense strategies. How can African communities rooted in unity and self reliance protect their sovereignty and resources in a rapidly changing world? Inspired by Nkrumah's vision of African unity and collective strength, this session will challenge us to think strategically about defense. This topic was meant to be for last week, but as you know, we had the African Celebration Day instead. So we've moved this to today, and we'll come back to market integration another time. You recall that we had a discussion around African identity, and it was clear to us all that most of us are still, if you like, operating within the neo-colonial identity. That, for instance, that I am a Ghanaian, or I am from Burkina Faso, or I am from Mali, or I am from Kenya, or I am from South Africa. And these neo-colonial territories that were created in Berlin, you recall, in, I believe, 1884, 1844, one of those anyway, that the independent African countries inherited these borders. And a lot of our brothers and sisters have been calling for these borders to be removed. The point is that Africans today, even Pan-Africanists, appear to be operating within these neo-colonial boundaries, proclaiming themselves to be citizens of this or that neo-colonial territory. And so there is no African identity. And by African identity, we mean an identity that is rooted in an African nation. Even those in the diaspora, the sixth region, are either Germans or Americans or English or Belgians or Brazilians, call it whatever you want. Now, if you're a Brazilian, you're not an African in terms of being a member of an African nation. If you're an American, you're not an African. Your skin may be as dark as mine or darker than mine, but the fact that your skin is black does not make you an African. Culturally, perhaps you're not even an African. Ethnically, you may be an African, but the fact that you're an African, the fact that your skin is black doesn't make you an African. And I think we get confused sometimes. And when you listen to the reaction of Africans to General Langley's defense of American interests on the continent, it brings home to you that Africans are confused. We are fundamentally confused when we think that just because an African, in quote, a black man, speaks for American interests, and that somehow he should not be speaking for American interests when he is an American general, because there's a country called United States of America. Then I think Africans are confused. We are confusing nationality with citizenship and so on and so forth. And it has been clear to me now for a while that Africans are fundamentally confused about who we really are. In the sense that we don't understand that it is only by having an African nation that we can say that somebody is an African. And by an African nation, we mean, for instance, also having an African passport. Now, only an African passport can challenge a European passport or an American passport or any other kind of passport. A Ghanaian passport cannot do that. A Nigerian passport cannot challenge a European or an American passport. So I think that in coming to a topic like coordinating defense strategies, we need to think beyond the nation states, because every time we come to these topics, people come to the topic as Ghanaians or people from Burkina Faso, or people from Libya, or people from South Africa, people from Malawi. We are thinking through the neo-colonial prism when we're talking about coordinating different strategies. Even the term coordinating, beneath it is implied that somehow there are different structures that need to be coordinated. And so Nkrumah called long ago for an African high command, one military that will secure the security of Africa. And currently, because of the confusion among our leaders and even among Pan-Africanists, we are no nearer that. So we are hoping that today's discussion will go beyond the nation states, these new colonial territories, that are the object of, or continuing object anyway, of imperialist control. Right? So we say, how can African nations coordinate the military defense strategies to ensure sovereignty? We need to go beyond that, asking questions like, how can African nations coordinate military defense strategies? Of course, the reality today is that there are African nations on the continent. But when we as Pan-Africanists meet, we need to go beyond this kind of framing of the questions. The idea of regional alliances. We need one African military. That is what we need, and that is what we should be talking about in order to inspire those who are not there yet to begin to think like that. So, of course, there are historical lessons from fighters like the Mau Mau in Kenya, or the ANC, and so on and so forth. The armies in Algeria who fought the French, then they're fighting in Angola and so on. So we can learn from these, and we can analyze parallels between past and present struggles for self-determination. But African self-determination now is not an issue. Nobody has put a gun to the head of Africans not to self-determine. What we need is leadership that will take up the baton of self-determination and decide that is what they want. If Africans decide that they want self-determination in terms of implementing it, nobody's going to stop us. It is we who are not doing it, and then we point to ghosts. We point to imaginary impediments, and then say that, well, because of this person or this structure and so on, somehow we can't do it. AFRICOM is on the continent because Africans want AFRICOM on the continent. If Africans decide they don't want AFRICOM, AFRICOM will pack and go. Look at what happened in Burkina Faso. They didn't want the French packed and went. It's as simple as that. Some of us are making the problem bigger than what it actually is. The days of colonial control are over. We are now in the neo-colonial regime, which means that Africans are in charge of the continent. And they are still, if you like, reporting to the imperialist masters. Yes, but it doesn't mean that the African people cannot tell them what to do. So we are hoping that this session will go beyond these nation states and their militaries, and that will have a chance to connect Nkrumah's philosophy and his ideological position, which is that the military of Africa must be an instrument of African self-determination, unification, and development. That is what the military is for. Okay, that's the purpose of the military. It is to secure Africa so that we can develop the continent in peace. At the moment, we can't, because every criminal is in Africa, from left, right, and center, because there is no military, there is no defense, there is no continental defense strategy. Okay, and then when people like General Langley speaks for the American interest, then we don't understand. Why is a black man speaking for America? Hello, he is an American. What do you expect? You expect an American to be speaking for an African nation that does not exist? Come on. So please, let's grow up and look at the whole thing in a mature way, in a way that says that we understand what we are talking about. Because currently, right now, we don't know what we're talking about. Okay. And when you look at when you listen to some of the interviews of General Langley, some of them are, in fact, so boring. I find them hard to listen to because they don't go to the heart of the matter. You know, how does America train your army? Come on, America training your army, and you're an imperialist, a country that has imperialist interest in your country, and then comes and trains your army. I mean, does that make sense? I mean, does that make sense to anyone? Anyway, so we are hoping that we will have an interesting discussion today, and talk about what really matters, which is an African defense strategy rooted in the abolition of the current neo-colonial armies, the setting up of an African high command so that we can have a defense, proper defense strategy for the continent, not one that defends presidents. So I hope I have initiated some thinking on your part on what the issues are. So, Brother Pigeon, I hope you can proceed to chair the meeting, and then we'll hear from. I believe you've
yes.
some, and then we will, based on that, have a discussion. As far as as far as I know, no African country is producing military weapons anyway. You know, there's no African country that is producing military weapons of any that will have any meaningful impact when it comes to war. We don't produce aeroplanes. We don't produce fighter jets. We don't produce ships. We don't produce anything. So let's stop all this nonsense and let's focus on what really matters, which is to unify the continent, secure our resources, use them to build a new Africa, and stop all this nonsense. From what I can see in terms of defense. Brother Pigeon, over to you.
Thank you, Brother Kwame. You started it a bit high. That is good you started that high so that you can put our conversation into context today. Thank you once again and welcome, member. Brother Kwame might not be talking harsh to you, but also harsh to your mind and the presidents and those who control our country as well. So yes, we are looking at common defense strategy. Some time back, I think I was trying to link what's happening in Burkina Faso with what Nkrumah said, that the independence of Ghana was meaningless unless it is tied to the total liberation of the continent. And that's what I want to bring to this context today. And I say it about Burkina Faso, that then the liberation of Burkina Faso is meaningless if it's not tied with the total liberation of the continent. So the responsibility of the Sahel regions, the same way Ghana did it, to ensure that they help in coordinating this common defense system and also to help ensure that we liberate other territories. We look a bit at this book when Nkrumah described these various territories. But permit me to start a bit on how Nkrumah says about how foreign countries are prepared in terms of their military. And he says that there are various organizations that were formed just to defend the common defense system, which Brother Kwame is talking about that you're lacking. They have NATO, they have SATO, they have ANZA, they have CENTO, they have a lot of military systems on defense. I know in Africa we'll be trying to talk about AFRICOM, but is AFRICOM African, or AFRICOM is the US command system to oversee Africa? Because we see Langley coming here and he's speaking about AFRICOM and AFRICOM all over. But if you look at it, they even have their foreign military branch to look at us. Then we talk of Africa Union having what you call AMISON. But realize that what the Commission also talking is very important. That AMISON, what does it control? What does it have? You see? So all these are things that you have to put into context. When you come back to what Nkrumah is trying to describe in his book, Handbook for Revolutionary Warfare, when you talk about we need to have an organization for revolutionary warfare. And Nkrumah talks about the military balance. And here he touches on those various territories. So there are territories that are liberated. For example, today you can say Burkina Faso are liberated. And these are areas that may present minimal differences due to the varying ways in independence. So today we can talk about the current neocolonial collection. So these are countries that puppet regimes have been overthrown, probably, and now they have what you call either progressive leadership. But then there's a second category of territories, which are called actually zones under still enemy control. You look at so many countries in the continent today, still have what you call the foreign military bases. So over 35 foreign military bases in the continent. So these are zones that are actually through an administration manned by foreigners. The territory is then externally subjected. And that is along the Africa and across the Africa. They are then working through what you call a puppet government made up of local elements. You see, that's what you call neocolonialism. The territory is then both internally and externally subjected. So these are the territories talked about by Nkrumah. Then there's what territory refers as the contested territory. And these are zones under enemy control that anytime become contested area if the revolutionary forces in activity there are either on the verge of armed struggle or have reached an advanced stage of revolutionary organization. In some cases, a spark is enough to determine the turning point for preparation for action. In other circumstances, the armed can smolder underground for a much longer period. So they have what we call sham independence. So these are the various territories we have in the continent. The question is, how do you bring them all together? Then Nkrumah talked about the high command, which Brother Kwame is talking about so far. Nkrumah said that Africa will be liberated sooner or later against all odds. But if it is to be soon, by an accelerated revolution of the people and a total war against imperialism, then we must establish a unified continental high command here and now to plan revolutionary war and to initiate action. If we fail to do this, that's what Nkrumah wrote there, and to lead the people's revolution, we are likely to be swept away one by imperialism and neocolonialism. We have experienced and witnessed this across the continent. And it is no longer feasible to take a middle course. The term for reform, however progressive, is past. For reforms cannot hold the enemy at bay, nor can they convince the silent internal agent of neocolonialism, eliminate the puppet, or even destroy the capitalist structure and mentality inherited from colonialism. The cancerous growth and profiteering at the very heart of our parties and territories, whether they emerge under the cloak of constitutionalism, parliamentarism, bureaucratic etiquette, and imposing civil services officers in the West, a political tradition to maintain bourgeoisie's capitalist status quo by means of military coups, as if they appear in the more obvious means of corruption and nepotism. This is that the people's armed struggle, the highest form of political action, is a revolutionary catalyst in the neocolonial situation. So Nkrumah is rooting for a high command. Up to date is that we have not actually hit to the call of Nkrumah, and therefore we don't have a common defense system. If today Kenya is attacked, like now they're attacking Mali, or they're attacking Nigeria or Burkina Faso, where is the common defense system that can go stand with Burkina Faso? Today, if that is happening, the next neighbors, ECOWAS and Nigeria, are ready to even send their military to join the enemy, the French, to fight their brother. Comrades, it's very sad and very unfortunate. And therefore, today we call out your attention to discuss with us and share your thinking with us on how do we build a common defense system. The need, the importance, the necessity, and the urgency of this system is clear to all of us. The question is, how do we do it? And how do we move forward? And what do you think about the general concept? So I will be opening the conversation on the floor for members to share their thinking. We basically want to hear your thinking, and that's what we always do. Just share with us your thinking. I'll be looking at the data, the statistic number of military personnel the continent has, just to give you a glimpse of this. If the continent can combine its so-called military personnel, then our number in terms of number will be having a military number of around over 10 million, which is almost 7 to 8 times the American military personnel in terms of number of personnel. The China military personnel will be around 3 times the China military personnel, because some of them have 1.8, like America. China is, I think, is around 3 point something. Then Egypt is leading in the continent around 5 point something million. I'll be picking that number. But it shows you we have the number. The next thing that Brother Kwame is asking is, do we produce the materials for military defense? Or do we want to go buy from them to come defend ourselves against them? This is the tragedy we have in the continent. So, comrades, let's open this conversation and hear what you have to say for us. So thank you very much, and please most welcome all members who are joining us. So let me start my conversation today by General Nunaki. General, tell us what you think and give us the updates of how the Sahel region is trying to defend themselves against this same common enemy. Go ahead, comrade.
Yes, give thanks, son of the league, for the prestigious words, and to the elder Kwame and everyone at large. Yes, my brother, I'll just say that for now, what's happening so far concerning the Sahel is that the Mali, which is the chair of AES, which is the Mali leader, General Assimi Goïta, is apparently, we heard that he's also, in fact, he is, not even apparently, he is considering also to start building their own gold refinery. And of course, a Russian contractor will be building that gold refinery, and they'll be owning about 65% of that gold refinery as the Malian government. And also, we heard that the borders between Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have been removed. So people from Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are free to move. So basically, it's a one country now. So I'm starting just to check to verify those developments. But from what I heard, it could be possible because since they announced that they'll be combining the three countries, colonial countries, into one AES, they were still preparing the constitution and how they're gonna govern to combine the three countries. Whereas the Assimi Goïta, the Malian government, is the leader of these three countries, which is formed one country. And what else? Oh yeah, also what we've heard is that the AES are also formulated of, or in their final stages of formulating an African national anthem for AES. So I think maybe that would be obviously the true African national anthem in this current time. Should they finalize that anthem, then AES believe all African revolutionaries should have a copy of that one. So those are the three major things I've heard. Oh yeah, even from what I heard there in Niger and Morocco and Algeria. I don't know whether they've decided. Also this one and that one of the borders, I'll finalize it more. I still need to research more, but from what I've heard is that Algeria and more especially Morocco might consider to remove terrorist camps in their borders, because these terrorist camps are in borders of the neighboring countries of AES, which includes Benin, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Algeria, and those countries. They are all bordering the AES. So this is where the terrorists use these countries to launch attack from across the board into AES. So the Niger government, I think them and the Mali government should come up with the results of whether they've finalized this deal with Algeria and Morocco to remove the terrorist camps. We don't know. And also the citizens of Nigeria and Ghana, more especially Nigeria to be specific, they want to join the citizens, not the government of Nigeria, the citizens of Nigeria are starting to protest in wanting to join in with the AES. So they want Nigeria to be part of AES, but obviously the Nigerian government is still against that. So yeah, those are the developments this week. We did pick up that's going on outside of AES. And then of course outside of AES were the protests happening in London, even here in South Africa. We did have a protest in Pretoria where some of the organizations here, Pan-African organization, came together on the 25th of May, went to the embassy of Burkina Faso here in South Africa, and headed in a letter of support to reach the president, more especially there of Burkina Faso in the AS, to declare that they have our support in some of the Pan-African organizations here in South Africa. So yeah, those are the developments we had this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Raspala. Thank you very much. Before you come in to share your thinking in regard to also this conversation on common defense, I have come across, I think, the research that I did sometimes back on behalf of the CSG. It needs some updates a bit, but this is the report that we had in terms of our military defense. It says that by that time, according to Stockholm International Peace and Research Institute, published on Monday, 24th April 2023, in Africa, cumulated military spending fell by 5.3% to 39.4 billion in 2022. The report indicates that military spending in North African countries reached $19.1 billion, down 3.2 compared to the spending in 2021. In the sub-region, Algeria and Morocco accounted for 74% of the overall spending. The Western Sahara conflict, which has pitted Morocco against Algerian back for Polisario Front since 1973, made them a catalyst in their new arm race between the two Maghreb countries. In 2022, Algeria's military spending fell by 3.7% to $9.1 billion, while Morocco remained unchanged at $5 billion. In sub-Saharan Africa, the spending fell by 7.3% to $20.3 billion. Cumulatively, 20.3, the whole sub-Saharan Africa, while America alone spends around $730 billion annually. Now, mainly this is due to sharp drop in the spending in Nigeria. Nigeria military spending in that year dropped by 38% to $3.1 billion, and South Africa also dropped by 8.4% to $3 billion. They said that Ethiopia, on the other hand, had increased its spending. The offensive launch in November 2020 against the Tigray rebels increased the Addis Ababa spending by 88% in 2022, bringing it to $1 billion. The CIFRI report points out that global military spending increased by 3.7% in 2022 to a record of $2.24 trillion. The whole world spent $2.24 trillion. Well, the whole sub-Saharan Africa only spent $20 billion. Maybe that is because of also UK, the war that was going on in Ukraine by that time. So United States, China, Russia, India, and Saudi Arabia were the top 5 spenders accounting to about 63% of the global military spending. Only those 4 countries account to 63% of the global spending. Now, Europe saw the largest annual increase in the spending since the end of the Cold War by 13%, largely due to the spending related to Russia-Ukraine war. Now, if you look at this chart a bit, this chart gives you a small analysis of the 2022 in terms of millions. You see that the Algeria is spending 9.9 billion at that time, and the total military personnel is 465,000. I don't want to go to the separation on that. Nigeria was following by 3.5 billion, the total military personnel of 215,000. Morocco, 1 billion, with a population of military 375. And it goes like that. Egypt is spending high again, is close to the second highest spending with 3.4 billion. But look at the military personnel in Egypt alone, 1.2 million. I think it's the highest in the continent. Now, the countries spend 1.3 million in terms of military personnel. Some countries' expenditure in terms of military is very low. Tanzania is having around 748. So the countries that are above 1 billion in terms of their military personnel is Tunisia, Kenya, South Africa, Egypt, Libya, and then you go up to countries like Morocco, Nigeria, and Algeria. The rest spend below $1 million. You go to that list until you get to Zimbabwe, you go down to countries like Benin, the last one. But if you look at comparative analysis, which is very important, you realize that China has spending $230 billion annually. $230 billion annually from their military, with a military personnel of 3.1 million military personnel. India is spending 54 billion with a military of 5.1. Yeah, India is the almost largest single country number of military personnel, 5.1 million, but they are spending almost a quarter of what China is spending. But look at the US. US is spending $761 billion of their budget annually for military functions, and they have a total military personnel of 1.8, the third below China. Then you go to Russia, which is spending only 86%, 82.86 billion with a population of 1.3. Then you go to UK. Now, those are the top countries that are doing their spending. So this is a very clear indicator of how the countries are spending much in terms of their military personnel and to defend themselves. But if you do all the analysis, now you find that Africa is having so many military bases that are controlled still, and so many other reasons that are here. So let me just end this analysis a bit here, but I think it can help us contribute to this conversation. Yeah. So let's go ahead.
Pigeon, leave it on the page before, the one that shows the comparative figures. I think that will be useful for us.
All right, please, thank you. Let me do that. Yeah, I think this can now be an eye-opener for us to continue the conversation. So let me get to Elder Sam. Elder Sam, you've been in the struggle for long. You've seen the war in Africa, you've seen the liberation, and this other part of it. What can you say about this conversation, Elder?
Yeah, thank you, Brother Pigeon, and everybody on the platform. Good evening. Yeah, I missed the opening remarks and so forth, but I heard Brother Kwame very, 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 very on the upwind about we taking a decision or coming up with a decision out of this discussion. But I think for me, it is good. We are starting on a good footing. But I think the decision lies with us. We all know and we all have experience. We either choose the quick fix way or we choose the protected way. And anybody that has been in war knows that you need to plan, you need a strategy, you need tactics, and you need to start by doing a thorough analysis. I think all what have been shared now are just general information, but you need to go into a thorough study of what you want to do and how you want to do it. And I think I don't have to spell this out. You know, the quickest way, in fact, it has already happened. after Burkina Faso or the 3 states in Africa did what they did, I don't know how many delegations from all parts of the continent have gone to meet those leaders or have gone to meet President Traore himself. Sitting here where we are, do we know what those groupings have been saying or talking to those others? So I'm trying to say this is a big cake that we need for ourselves as a group. Maybe we can say, okay, forget about those other groups. We are this group. So maybe then the analysis I'm talking about or the decision I'm talking about, this group must say, ours is a long and protracted approach. And if that is the approach, we need to do a thorough analysis of the situation. And that we need to, the way I was taught, split ourselves into groups. You are dealing with this, you are dealing with that, you are dealing with that. Come up with what each group comes up with, bring it into the bigger group. You know, this is the protracted way of doing things that if you want to do that. But as I say, currently, if I listen to what Brother Kwame was saying, for me, the easy way, and unfortunately, sometimes haste cuts even the idea that you have. For me, the easiest approach would be, we decide that all who are in this group in our countries, can we identify people who have a common cause on this? Can we build them into a study group doing that certain, because what you need to do, the 3 leaders, they need our support, basically. They have already started a revolution. So the easiest method would be say, let all the young people that are ready go and join those leaders and then try to expand from where they are. But remember what you are doing, you are leaving a vacuum here in your own homeland. What Brother Kwame said, nationality or nationals. Is that the correct way? We always hear in South Africa say, we missed an opportunity during the 2 world wars. When everybody was focusing in fighting Hitler, fighting the monsters up there, the defense force in South Africa was more involved in there. And what happened, revolutionary movements did not take the opportunity. Most of our forefathers became part of that war. They were conscripted, they went into that war. When they had the real opportunity of upsetting or toppling the governments that were oppressing them at that. So the issue I'm talking about is this group must identify what they want to do and how they want to do it. And then we can take it from there. Thank you.
Brother Kwame?
Sorry. Yeah, Brother Sam, this is a discussion. It's not a planning meeting. Thank you.
Agreed.
Brother Kwame, do you still want to come in?
No, I think Brother Sam has acknowledged my point. It's a discussion. Mine was to initiate a discussion. It's not a planning meeting. But I take everything he said. But this is a discussion. And out of this discussion, we come up with what we think we should do. But this is a discussion. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sister Tapua?
Hello, everyone. Yes.
Hello.
I hope you can hear me. I was just, what I have been doing is listening to the contributions that have been made so far. And what comes to mind for me is brought out in the way I have analyzed the topic, coordinating the African defense strategies. I think within that topic, we are acknowledging that we've got a threat as Africans, but we are fragmented in our positions. because the underlying assumption is if we're going to be coordinating, we need a clearly defined enemy or threat. The different nationalities that Brother Kwame has been referring to, do they define the threat in the same way? Or do we all define the threat in the same way? And if not, what can be done about the differences in perception of who our enemy or our source of threat is? And then when we're talking about coordinating, I think I totally agree with what Brother Kwame has referred to, but we are where we are at the moment. And I take on board everything that he said, that we need to think as an African nation. Yes, we do need to think as an African nation, but taking into account of where we are saying we're still confused. How do we help each other get out of that confusion in order to coordinate the defense strategies? Because when you're coming up with a strategy, you're also acknowledging that we've got a common goal. Do we, as disparate African nations, albeit it's unsatisfactory where we are, how do we come up with one strategy, one goal? Because once we have that, then we can start coordinating towards that one goal. But at the moment, because of where we are, we have challenges. And I think our role then is to try and get us to work towards being one Africa, to come up with one defense, to come up with one perceived or severally for us to.
Yeah, go ahead. We lost you a bit. Go ahead. Or I lost you a bit.
Think of examples of where being taken advantage of. Hello? Okay, we've got countries being taken advantage of. We've got leadership being taken advantage of. So that when I'm looking at, I'm not only looking at nationalities, I'm also, strangely, I started thinking, we don't only need to coordinate the African defense strategy against our external threats, but we've got internal threats. How do we coordinate against internal threats? Because at the moment, we have liberation movements that have lost their way, but based on what we see them doing, but their talk still has remnants of Pan-Africanism. So you will find that they, depending on what they want to achieve, will change color like a chameleon and confuse people in an effort for them to protect their Berlin Conference defined nations. So we've got a big job. And I think that's where we need to make sure we are aware of where we are and how do we coordinate? How do we work as Africans without being used in the Caribbean like we were against our own brothers because we didn't have a common goal. We don't have a commonly defined threat or enemy. It's a big challenge. I think I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask Brother Kwame at a time maybe to respond to some of the few issues you try to raise. Of course, know that maybe having the answer, but also share his thinking in some of the few concerns you raised. But one particular thing that is of interest that I'd like to note from your input is that do we have a common enemy? Do we as a continent have agreed on a common enemy? Or are we also enemy to each other? Because we are coming with a system to defend ourselves as a continent. Are we also defending ourselves against our next neighbor? Because, for example, now we see as much as some of the war in the continent are controlled by the neocolonialism, but today you see Rwanda is in a fight with Congo. So can Rwanda and Congo sit together to agree on a common defense or come up to support a common defense for the continent? The same thing is going on in Sudan, both South and North Sudan, or even within internal. But of course, it's very clear that some of these wars have a hand outside. The weapons they are using comes outside. The people influencing some of the decision comes outside, and the people benefit also comes outside. But that shows you that we will also have to move to the highest level of consciousness so that we can, first of all, stop fighting each other. We can, first of all, stop killing each other and think about how do we defend us collectively against an enemy who is somewhere out there. So two things you raise very important is that we are in a common enemy. Are we also enemy of each other? That might be also some issues that may be affecting the common defense system. I think I like to pick that as we move along with this conversation so that also members can also share their thinking in regards to those key issues we are also raising as part of this conversation.
Yeah. So, Chair, if I may come in there, listen to Sister Poa. You can hear the clarity of an educator who has complete grasp of what is at stake. And you hear from Sister Tapoa's presentation, you can hear how she puts or lays on the table the current thesis, which is our current reality, the antithesis. She didn't use those words, but you could hear it from what she's saying. The antithesis, which is the continental approach that we need, and then out of this conflict between the thesis and the antithesis, will come the synthesis. And so yes, there are internal enemies as well. Some of our presidents are enemies to the continental unification of Africa, its development and total liberation. Let's be clear. Some of our presidents are enemies of that. So we are under no illusion, because we are dialecticians, we are under no illusions to think that the enemy only is outside. The enemy is also within. But what we are certain of is that with a continental approach, we can stop them. So let me broaden the discussion to this, which is that Africa's greatest military and geopolitical strength lies not in individual states, but in unity. Let's break it down. Let's take equipment and logistics. Most African armies rely on foreign supplies, Russia, China, France, US, etc. Yeah, supply chains are fragmented. Maintenance is inconsistent. And many of our armies lack what kind of unity? A unified procurement system that would allow bulk purchasing, shared maintenance, and local arms industries to flourish. Because right now we don't have local arms industries. You know, just I don't know if some of us know. Did you know that the Germans trained some families in Africa when they had colonies to be producers of arms? Did you know that? So where I come from, for instance, there's a whole family, and in that family, they can produce guns. This was before the Second World War. And it is rumored that one of the reasons that they moved against Germany decisively was because Germany was working on a system that they didn't like, which is that teaching the Africans how to produce arms. Also, I don't know if you know, but where I come from in Ghana, the people that come from my place, they are the masons, the carpenters, and so on. Anyone who has the skills in terms of masonry, carpentry, and all that.
Artisan.
The artists, they come from my place, actually. And who trained them? It was the Germans. I'm just throwing that in to say that there are no local arms industries. It doesn't mean right now that they are the only groups that are those things in Ghana, where I come from. But that was the case under the Germans. Now, I'm not saying German imperialism is good. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that that is a fact. Now, so we have local arms industries. We need local arms industries. So we share transportation hubs, ports, and infrastructure that would boost continental mobility and resilience. So, for example, if we have a United African Defense Logistics Command, that would centralize and modernize movement and supply. Comparable to EU or NATO's, what they call NATO's Logistics Command. So we can have that in terms of equipment and logistics. Secondly, a unified command. Right now, African armies are siloed. Even in peacekeeping, they struggle to operate under a single chain of command. You all remember what happened when Nkrumah sent the Ghana armed forces to the Congo to secure the life of Patrice Lumumba. That was their goal, to go to Congo and to secure Lumumba's life so that he's not killed. That was their mandate. But when they went, we know what happened. They did not carry out that order. Instead, they decided to listen to the UN guys who had no interest in securing Patrice Lumumba's life. Anyway, the rest is history. Let me not dwell on that. All I'm saying is that the African armies, that's a challenge we have right now. Regional blocs like ECOWAS, SADC, they work at cross purposes, useless in a sense. So there's a need for unity, even with respect to unified command. A continental military doctrine and joint command could coordinate efforts against shared threats like terrorism, piracy, foreign interference. AFRICOM says it's in Africa because of terrorism. But who are the institutions that have bred terrorism on the African continent? Who created Boko Haram? Who created Boko Haram? Didn't drop from the sky. Somebody created Boko Haram as a thorn in the flesh of the Nigerian military. It was a deliberate creation. So let's be clear that sometimes those who come to save you are the very people who created the problems in the first place. So all I'm saying is that we need a unified command. All right, that's a problem. That is the second issue. So that we have so that, for example, an African Standby Force, ASF, which is still underused, could evolve into a true united African Defense Force, what Nkrumah called the African High Command. Then there's 3, modernization. Many African militaries operate with outdated equipment, colonial era training systems, a lack of research and development. There's no R&D in African militaries. None. So what we need, so there's a need for unity even there. We need a Pan-African military academy system, right? Which is with R&D investment pool and joint innovation labs that could drive homegrown military technology, like the DARPA in the US. We could have our unified African Defense Innovation Agency. Why not? Finally, the interoperability across nations. Different languages. I don't understand Luo, but the doesn't understand Ewe. I don't understand Kikuyu. Kikuyu doesn't understand Ewe, and so on and so forth. We are only speaking English. Even how we are communicating right now, English, because we don't have a common, where we have Swahili, but we don't use it. Some of us don't understand it. We're trying to learn it. It takes a while. Anyway, be that as it may, it's a challenge. Different languages, incompatible communication systems. There's no standard operating procedures. So it makes coalition warfare and disaster response chaotic. Again, the point is that there's a need for unity. Standardized equipment, training, rank structures, language protocols, common military drills like NATO's joint exercises. And the result of that will be a cohesive African military identity, capable of responding swiftly and efficiently to crisis. So I am pointing out, as part of our discussion, the 4 areas that speak to us in terms of unity. Please, this is a discussion, as I said to Brother Sam. We're not here to plan anything. We're here to discuss. Anybody here, as Brother PG will remind us, who thinks that they can help us in leading this part of our work, you are welcome to let us know. Brother Pigeon, so that is my short kind of addition to the discussion.
Okay.
To say that unity is not just political, it is essential. A united Africa can turn its massive military manpower, strategic geography, and useful population into a world-class continental force, not for imperial conquest, but for continental sovereignty, peace, and prosperity. And Brother Pigeon, you are right. The manpower alone of Africa, Africa's manpower is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, is bigger than any single country. Our manpower in terms of personnel is bigger than China, is bigger than US, bigger than France, bigger than the UK, and even China. Even China, when you take, if you take into account the reserve, you know, we are bigger. So it is possible with some planning, as Brother Sam has said, it's possible. But as Sister Tapua has said, we are not there yet. The current thesis is that we have African nations with presidents, some of whom are just interested in how their wives travel abroad to have babies abroad. They're not really interested in Africa's tomorrow. That's what they're interested in. So as Sister Tapua has said, perhaps one of the things we need to do is to conscientize our people. And I think, Brother Pigeon, we are right to say that that is one of the reasons why we started our Saturday classes, for the conscientization of Africans when it comes to liberation, unification, and development. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Kwame. You have pointed to an element that then has drawn my attention to one of the universities that was formed in Kenya some few years ago. I think it's 2 to 3 years ago. It's called the National Defense University. In fact, it's now open to the public, but I saw just the graduation the other day. The daughter of the president graduated from this university. Just some of the programs they are running include Masters of Art in National Security and Strategy. They are also doing postgraduate diploma in National Security and Strategy. All these are what they are offering under the university. But again, you'll go external to ask yourself, who is running this? Of course, it's within the government public university. It has been listed now as one of the public universities in government. So you can go here to do your studies in security and everything else. But again, you might be finding that some of the people around this are still back to them. That the people who are actually teachers, that the people who come out with the program and everything else that need to be done. So there's all about what they do here. But there's an element of this university in Kenya that exists, and I think is in line of trying to make Kenya maybe run their military training within the continent. But yes, it's very important. So if you see, for example, the chancellor of the university is the president himself. The president of Kenya is the chancellor of the university. And if you see the council chairperson of the university is the general of defense, which means the chief commander-in-chief, the chief of defense, the CAG, is actually the chairperson of the university. And you have also the lieutenant general as well as the vice chairperson. So it's purely, the leadership is purely military in one or the other. But yes, this is one of what they're trying to do at some of the university. But beyond this, in terms of study and the rest, the question still go back to what Nkrumah said. Are we studying them to liberate ourselves, or are we studying ourselves to copy them? Because basically, I think the purpose of education, as we have described and what Nkrumah tells us, is what is the purpose of education? Is it that we study to emancipate ourselves or liberate ourselves? And how can we do that while they are still part of the team that support and sponsor what you do within these universities? So it's also very important for us to know that. But I think as we are also having this conversation forward, is that there's a need for us to understand that we must be conscious enough to have the protection of the total continent as a priority to all of us. But yes, let's listen to what others also have to say so that we can come back again and have this conversation as we keep moving. We have Seth Shaba. I know you joined us here a bit earlier. Do you have anything to share with us in regards to this conversation? Seth Shaba. Kwatiwayo, please feel free to unmute yourself and share with us what you're thinking. We also have Sister here with us. Sister knows you joined early. Are you able to contribute something in regards to this, Sister?
Sorry. I appreciate what everybody's said so far, but I really can't understand why Algeria, we're talking about Algeria in any way, because wasn't it last year that the Algerian army killed a whole load of Africans? In fact, we don't even know the numbers that were actually killed. So I find it very hard that, you know, we're including them as part of the top lot of people we want in Algeria and Morocco. I find it a bit strange. I don't think Morocco is quite as bad, but Algeria, and I had heard what the general had said about the Sahel states before, but I hadn't heard that they were going to unite as a nation. I knew they'd open their borders to each other, which I thought, wow, fantastic. This is the first signs of unification, that people can travel with no borders. And I just love that. But if they're actually going to go under one umbrella with one person almost as president of the whole thing, that would be interesting. What do I have to say? I have, you know, until we get the Americans out of Ghana or out of our airport, and the French out of our neighboring countries, I think that neocolonialism just runs riot, and we're semi-deluding ourselves. Well, not deluding ourselves, but we're semi-not focusing on actually getting them out like the Sahel states have done. And I think that is a shame. I think that what Brother Sam says is something that we should take note, even if it's not sort of in a military formation, but we should take note of who exactly our enemies are. When I say our enemies, those who are not for us are our enemies as far as I'm concerned, or those who think that they can use us to enhance their states and their countries are our enemies, because they don't want us to succeed or grow. What else can I say? Military-wise, yeah, we have a long way to go. I've heard what Brother Kwame said about people being able to make their own guns. And, you know, I've heard that for a long time. Maybe not submachine guns and stuff like that, though there's no reason that they can't. But that they did manufacture small arms. I think that's all I've really got to say. I think until we get rid of some of the people who are pressing us, and we can only do that by trying to organize, as we're doing, you know, that people hear about what are the issues and start to know them so they can say, hey, no. I think, you know, we're slightly in trouble, and I think we're in trouble if we're going to include Algeria. Sorry, they did too much bad only a year or so ago. Thank you.
Right. Okay. So Brother Fiji's asked me to step in slightly. So let me do that. So brothers and sisters, whilst I just share, so Brother Pigeon can can come back in a moment. Let's be clear what the enemy is. So, who is the enemy? Do we all know? Do we all know who the enemy is? Are we all clear what
we
the
are
enemy is?
also the enemy of our own, of our own making.
Yes, but do we know who the enemy is?
Neo-colonialists who still try to rule by getting our minerals, telling us what to do, involved in our banking, involved in every aspect of our lives, even food and food production, and they're all enemies.
So we're all clear that the enemy is imperialism and its tools, colonialism and neo-colonialism. When our parents were fighting for independence, at that time the enemy was colonialism, which was direct colonial rule. Direct colonial rule is now over on the continent. What we have is indirect colonial rule, which is neo-colonialism, which means that basically that the policy that is made in Africa is not made for the benefit of Africans. It's made for the benefit of people outside Africa. In other words, our policies are made with reference to foreign interests, what this company can loot in DRC, what that company can steal in Ghana, and so on. That is the enemy. The enemy, in this sense, is not a human being. It's not this human being or that human being. The enemy is the system. And this system is what we need to destroy. Is a system of imperialism and its current system of neo-colonialism. That is the enemy. So I hope we're all clear on that. So it's not about shedding blood. That is not the point of our struggle. It's not to say that people will not defend, and they will not defend what doesn't need to be defended. They will defend, but the enemy is not that uncle of mine or that brother of mine or that sister of mine who is the president. That's not the enemy. It's a system that brother of mine is in charge of and using to oppress our people. That is the enemy. I hope we're all clear on that. Now let's continue. Let's hear from others who haven't spoken. So
my hand is up, brother.
can I come back to you, sister?
Well, it was about who the enemy is.
Okay, carry on then.
Okay, because you say it's not about bloodshed, but the fact of the matter is that some of our enemies have shed our blood in recent times, and we cannot ignore that, and we cannot pretend it hasn't happened. So I hear everything you say. I agree with you, but you know, there are some who in recent times, just because people have been Black, have shed their blood, and therefore, sorry, you know, if we're talking about them, we need to be careful what we're saying about them and not trying to include them as our friends. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for shedding light on the fact that institutional values are carried by human beings. So thank you for drawing our attention. Sister Tapua, you want to comment on that, and then we hear from others. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much for clarifying who the enemy is. Coming from a country like Zimbabwe, where the colonial system was clearly identified as the enemy at that time, I think we need to, in our effort to conscientize people, move, I'm not sure to say away from the expression neo-colonialism, but actually identify the things that this particular enemy does that makes us unable to attain our goal of unifying Africa. Then when we get that to that level of saying, this is how we identify the enemy, then we are on our way. Because if the internal threats that we face use the vocabulary, neocolonialism, we're fighting this, we're fighting that, we need to attain that. But when you look at their deeds, that's when you can see who is supporting what. So, for example, you find Kagame being portrayed as somebody who's fighting for the liberation of Africa, who's a good example, but we know some of the things that he does. We see the Kenyan president being portrayed as somebody who is a Pan-Africanist, and he will come up with a brilliant Pan-African speech. But at the end of it, if you look at the results, so if we're going to talk about let's talk about what this system is, so that when we're conscientizing people, we're saying, when you see 1, 2, 3, 4, these are not your friends. I think we'll get a progress. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, Sister Tapo, I think everybody here would agree with you on that. And if you don't mind, I really request, as an educator, that you help us by leading this part of the work, which is to clarify what you're asking for is, let's clarify what neocolonialism is in the day-to-day life of our people, so they can identify the enemy when they see the enemy. So the enemy is not amorphous, but the enemy, when they see this, they know that's the enemy. So like you were saying, during the colonial era, when we saw the white man, we knew what the enemy was. The enemy was the white man in our country. Let's get rid of him, and then we've solved the problem. Only to find that after he left, the problem didn't go away. And so if neocolonialism is real, as you have explained, what does it look like? So if it is a cat, what kind of cat is it? Is it a black cat? Is it a gray cat? How long are its legs? How long is its tail? How high is this cat? How does this cat eat at night? Or does it eat during the day rather than at night? What are its mannerisms? And so on and so forth. So that we come up with a clear conceptual definition of what neocolonialism is and what the enemy is. And in that sense, we don't even need to use the word neocolonialism. We can use it in discussions, but when we have spelled it out, people can then identify. So I think what you're asking us to do, in light of what Sister Ida has also said, that the system kills people, and people are killed. The system sheds our blood, and therefore it needs to be identified clearly. Brother Koko is here. If you remember, Brother Koko gave us a presentation on what happened to Patrice Lumumba and how Eisenhower gave the order for him to be killed. And so, blood have been shed and reparations are in order. So thank you, Statapua. It would be nice, as I said, if you could agree to lead this part of clarification for us. I'm happy to work with you on this so that anybody else interested will come together and to define or clarify what is neocolonialism in our everyday lives. What does it look like? So thank you very much. Right, let's now go to, if you want to come back on that Statapua, that's fine. If you want to come back on that, that would be great. Otherwise, that's also okay.
Thank you. Not at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, let's now go to Namibia. Welcome. Oh, he's trying to join, so he can't speak at the moment. So let's go to General has spoken. Setshaba Oi Taiweo. Please unmute yourself and contribute. Thank you. Setshaba. Right. So whilst waiting for Setshaba to speak, let's go to brother the King Mauli.
Okay, great.
It is- it is-
My contribution has to do with the enemy. Yes, the enemy to me, I think, is the philosophy, the differences in philosophy. You know, if someone's principle or philosophy is to see, every black person or every tribe person, a different tribe, as his enemy, or as someone inferior to her, automatically that person becomes an enemy. Why do people, colonialism, I think it is even taking place even within, among us as people, it's taking place among us. Recently, I met some of mine and I engaged in conversation with them, only for them to tell me that, oh, they were in jail all this while. What was the reason? The reason was just that, as Brother Kwame you mentioned earlier, they actually manufacture gun, you see. And when they made this gun, they sold it for, some people, and through that they were arrested. So I was like, if this talent is within your country and you could have used it for, the best way to do is to engage such a person as a resource personnel, and and develop on it. Rather, you kill that person's talent totally by arresting the person and jailing the person, preventing the person from developing that innate ability. So at the end of the day, it's come back to the mentality we have as people. The mentality, families have the same. It comes back to that, the basic aspect of how we see ourselves. So the enemy cannot really be classified as in a color, tribe, family, and others. It goes beyond. Sometimes, yeah, even religion is also part of it. So if we are we're talking about the enemy, we have to really, it's a very broad something that we have to organize properly and identify the various facets of it and how to address it.
I agree, and I'd like to nominate you to join the the working party that will define your colonialism. The King, I want to nominate you to join Sister Tapua to help identify the enemy.
All right.
By default, Brother Pigeon and I will be part of you.
Okay.
By default. Yes, we've heard from Brother the King Mauli. He's saying that there is a philosophical and even relational dimension of the enemy, and that total clarity is needed, so that when we see the cat, we don't think it's a tiger. When we see a tiger, we don't think the tiger is a cat. So thank you, Brother the King. Set Shaba, are you now able to speak, or do you not want to speak? In that case, you need to let me know in the chat. I don't know who you are. We welcome everyone to our meetings. You are most welcome, but we need to hear from you. If you don't want to speak, please let me know in the chat, so I leave you alone. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Shaba. Let's hear from Brother Coco. Brother Coco, sorry you had to wait in the meeting room for a while. My apologies. That was because I'm chairing until Brother Pigeon comes, so I may have missed you. So please forgive us. Yes, Brother Coco. Common defense strategy. What is your take on it, and what you've heard so far? Sorry, you haven't heard much because you just joined, but yeah, go on, please.
No, yes, I haven't really heard a lot, and I would have loved to hear a bit more before I can contribute. But since I've been called, I have to say a bit. As far as I know, as far as I can see, we are still using the colonial way of doing things, because the armies we have are there to protect the new colonial governments that we have in place. So even to ask those new colonial armies to unite, it's asking a lot. the first battle has to be won in the mind, in which we have to remind the Africans who they are. I attend the teacher meeting schools on Sundays, which is important. He emphasizes a lot on knowing who we are. We need to know who we are first before we start telling people what to do or how to do things. So I've seen the numbers which are put here. Those numbers, if Africa were to unite and form a common army, a common central command, common everything, we are talking about a serious firepower. But at this juncture, we are still in a place where everyone is thinking on a tribalistic basis. The South Africans are still thinking we are the strongest in Southern Africa. Everybody's looking up to us, and we don't want to let anyone in. Once that happens, South Africa is going to be ruined. I think ruined is a fear that they have in Southern Africa, that will happen. And in North Africa, the Algerians hate the Moroccans. The Moroccans hate the Algerians with passion over the occupation of Western Sahara. And we know what's happening in Libya. Libya is a state which, at the moment, those numbers really underlie, or they don't give you the true picture of what's happening in Libya, because Libya is still torn apart after NATO attack in 2011. And then there is that separation between North and South. So the Northans, they still see themselves as Arabs more than African. But our ancestors and our elders, including Professor Kwesi Kwapa, said we cannot allow the Arabs to unite over Africa while we are there and our brothers and sisters are there in North Africa, the Amazigh people. So we have to realize that the problem is bigger than just military. The military will unite when the masses have awakened. So see what happened in the Sahel. Because the people had awakened, then the army awakened. The army awakened, and that army is uniting. It's happening right now. But going back to what you always say, Brother Kwame, is that we have to have a home. We have to have a Pan-African country. We lost a Pan-African country when Dr. Nkrumah was toppled. And then Ahmed Sekou Toure was also removed from power. And the others, we can say Zambia was helping a lot. But in terms of Pan-Africanism, we had Dr. Nkrumah as a strong force. But they did everything to neutralize him, including using his own people. I saw a propagandist video here, which was shown about Banda, which gives everything, all the credit to His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie I. I don't say he didn't play a part. He did play a part. But what they are trying to do is to remove any doubt that Pan-Africanism is wrong for anyone who wants to pursue that, because everyone wanted to maintain this so-called independent states, and the Monrovia group pursued that. They pursued that, and they continue to do that. So my point is simple: is that we cannot form an army if we don't have a state. We need to have some state to have an army, and you have seen it in the Alliance of the Sahel. They managed to sort of reclaim their sovereignty because they already have a state in which they can do all of that. They can operate in all of that. But as we
we are at the moment, it's difficult for us to say we can even claim all of that firepower. We can't, because it doesn't belong to us. It belongs to those new colonialist governments who want to continue to rule in the name of, the race struggle, the bourgeoisie, in the name of saving their masters before the interests of the Africans. So ideology, it is important. Ideology is important. As Sankara said, a soldier, an army, the military without ideology is very dangerous. It's very dangerous. We have to teach our African brothers and sisters in the uniform to understand what Pan-Africanism stands for, because it's for all of us. And if we can persuade them that we are for everyone and we are all underneath everything else the same, we are brothers and sisters, I think I'll stop there, brother.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, brother Coco, as always, for enlightening us. Yes, the Moroccans and the Algerians hate each other, as you've said, and their hatred has been long-standing and deep-seated. It's a conflict over Western Sahara, and yes, this conflict has fueled diplomatic hostility, border tensions, and military posturing. Members of families are always fighting, as we all know. This member of the family is at loggerheads with that member of the family. Sometimes they even pull weapons, but then guess what? When the family sits down, they sort out the problem. And that's the solution. It's the family. It doesn't matter what the problem is in the family. When the family sits down, and here I'm talking about the family hierarchy to which those two warring people belong. When the family sits down, they sort out the problem. The problem is always resolved somehow or the other. And if they can't resolve it, they go to the house of the chief. And what the chief says finally is what holds. So these things can be resolved. And as Brother Coco has rightly pointed out, it is the lack of an African nation that is at the root of the problem. So I would suggest, following what Sister Tapua has said, what the King has said, what others have said, that the real issue here for us is for us to conscientize and see the creation of an African nation, because that is a central solution, as Brother Coco has rightly reminded us. Nkrumah said, seek ye first the political kingdom, and all other things will be added unto you. The political kingdom is the African nation. That is what we must seek first. The South Africans who are so engrossed with their little sovereignty, they don't want anybody else, yes, that happens in families. But when the African nation sits, and that all will be resolved. Some of the things that we see as problems will be resolved once the African nation is in place. So, Brother Coco, thank you for reminding us again that the coordinating defense strategies must be predicated, as Brother Coco has reminded us, on the African nation. And currently, there is no African nation. And as I said in my introduction, when you listen to Africans across the continent and what is said about General Langley, you understand Africans are confused. The man is black, but he is an American. Don't you understand that? He belongs to a nation called America. He can't speak for you, even though his skin is black. Yeah? Get that understanding that if you want, the only way you can solve the problem at that level is to have a comparable nation that can challenge the nation to which he belongs. So let's sort out the confusion. Brother Pigeon, you are back.
Do you mean that any black in America do not speak for Africa?
Oh, no, don't read it like that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that listen to what Africans respond, how they spoke about General Langley. You will think that you see the confusion, that General Langley is an American soldier. So, Brother Pigeon, focus on what I'm saying. I'm talking about General Langley and the fact that he's an American general. And because he's black, you want him to speak for you? It doesn't work like that. That's the point I'm making. I'm not saying that African Americans don't speak for Africans. The history shows that they do. The Pan-African Conference, you recall, up until 1945, was championed by Americans and West Indian African Caribbeans, who understood better the issue than Africans on the continent. Because sometimes Africans on the continent don't understand anything. When it comes to the real issues, they don't understand. Those who said that we needed continental Africa are the Africans who were outside, not those who are within. Look at Africans within. How many of them are fighting for United Africa? It is those outside, because they understand, Brother Pigeon. So, Brother Pigeon, I'm not saying that African Americans don't speak for Africans. But if you have an American soldier, an American soldier who is speaking because his orders come from an American political system, and you think he should speak for you just because he's a black man, for me, that shows you are confused. That shows we are confused. We don't understand what is good. That's the point I'm making, Brother Pigeon. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Colin. But again, the challenge that comes in is that if you look, most of soldiers in the continent, majority of these top soldiers have been trained in America or in Britain. Then we expect that they'll come back and speak for us.
That's the point. That you've hit it right on the head. Look, when General Frifa was one of the generals that overthrew Kwame Nkrumah, yeah, working with General Kutuka, yeah, the first time that General Frifa had criticisms of Nkrumah was when he was in Sandhurst in England. That's where he first heard about the criticism. And we know what happened later, that clearly he was, if you like, armed, in quote, when he returned from Sandhurst. Who sent him to Sandhurst? It was Nkrumah who sent him to Sandhurst. And so, yes, the idea of your enemy, how can your enemy train your soldiers? I mean, does that make sense anywhere?
That's why I like the aspect of Kenya coming with the defense university, but you still have also to see that even when we create our internal defense university, how do you protect it from being also still controlled internally?
Yeah, so what Kenya has done is not enough, but we need a Pan-African military academy at that level. But as Brother Koko has reminded us, that will come when we have the African nation. You see, the African nation is the key. And Brother Pigeon, let me hand over to you. You are back.
Thank you. But I didn't get out of the conversation, but I like where I'm getting at and how we are picking it up. Because again, we look at two elements. As we are trying to talk about common defense systems, I think there are a lot of things we need to struggle with first that are basic and foundational requirements for us to start discussing this. One, of course, as you say, the Coco, the challenge of the neocolonial puppets, who are actually the leaders in the country. Second is about, even if you remove them, the aspect of our military defense preparation. So are we ready to manufacture the guns? Because the West and the rest defend themselves with the guns they manufacture for materials we get from Africa. Their aeroplanes or their aircraft or whatever, the bullets, everything else they get from the continent. But again, I'm reminded of the concept of Dr. Wilson Crest on the origins of arms and ammunition and the shapes they have and why they came in and the innovation of guns and the rest. If I can remember by reading the Dr. Crest on the ISIS papers, Keys to Color. But beyond that, again, I want to highlight on the element you raised, Brother Kwame, that Ghana sent their soldier to go protect Patrice Lumumba. When today, Burkina Faso, Niger, and the rest are in the struggle, which African country are sending their soldier to go protect them? And the answer is very clear, because none of them, because they are all puppets of the West. So Russia is coming out to send their soldiers to come and protect. Well, them, they are not protecting. And I think if it should be a reverse, now that they are liberated, and the other countries are also fighting for the liberation, are they ready as Burkina Faso and Sahel to send their soldiers to defend somebody like myself or other people who are trying also to fight the Pan-Africanism? Because if they can do that, I think what President Nkrumah was doing is very conscious move. He knew that as much as he's liberated and he's independent, the Congo was very basic to him. Just the same as not only Congo, there are so many things I know Ghana supported and so many liberation leaders Ghana supported. Is the Sahel ready to move beyond just the liberation of their country and start acting what Nkrumah did and the role to support other people so that together we can wake up, defend each other so that we can join the rest together. If today, for example, Togo joins them or Ghana joins them, and then the West start attacking Ghana, will they, the Sahel, send their soldiers to help protect Ghana so that they can then be free so that we can join hands? I'm not saying they cannot, but just some loud questions I'm throwing out in this conversation. But let me see three answers up, then I'll come back. Maybe Sister Tapua, Brother Coco, and Sam, Elder Sam. Go in that order, please. Sister Tapua?
Thank you very much. I'm trying to see how we can help or how we can analyze and get to the bottom of what my brother Kwame is saying confused African. They perceive Langley. I think it's African because as Africans, we tend to see one of the same color as us, with us as one of us, without a doubt. And we actually attribute the philosophical positions that we have of Ubuntu and everything else as expectations on that person. So the fact that we've had a Langley thrown amidst us is one way that could be used to allay that confusion, to let the African who's been on the continent, who doesn't know of the existence of other Africans elsewhere, that the fact that someone is Black, whether they're on the continent or off the continent, does not necessarily mean they have Ubuntu. Because once we get them to understand that, then it actually means that we're not going to accept the type of governments that we're forced to accept, and the threats that are used against our people, particularly in Zimbabwe, where we're told, if you support so-and-so, you get the white people back. Because we have to break that cycle. And this is an opportunity, I think, that we can take to actually work through that confusion. Because it takes me back to my favorite quotation from Chinua Achebe. The white man is very clever. Now he has won our brothers, and our clan can no longer act like one. He's put a knife on the things that held us together, and we have fallen apart. A lot of us are struggling with that. The fact that some of us...
Mr. Tapua, I'm not getting you from my side.
Oh, all right.
We can hear you, Sister Tapua.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay, right.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. So what I'm saying is, this is an opportunity to conscientize people about the changes that have happened to us as Africans, particularly during the colonial period, and the effect that it has had on us. But it's going to be a difficult one, because if we tell people that not all Black people have Ubuntu, we now have a challenge of dealing with the descendants from formerly enslaved Africans who are committed to being African, who are aspiring and are leading the way, like my brother Kwame said, in terms of aspiring to have a united Africa. So it becomes one of those other things that we must deal with and get our people to understand that the fact that somebody is Black does not mean they are for you. The fact that someone is Black does not mean they have Ubuntu. The fact that someone is Black does not mean they want a united Africa. And hopefully we'll be able to get through the confusion, because I was really touched by that. I don't want confused African. Thank you. I'll stop here.
Thank you. We are having 10 minutes to go. And I request that those also come in after this, at least provide us with what do you think is the roadmap towards attaining these common defense system for Africa. A lot of issues you have explored, challenges, and the rest. Please feel free to add in your input, but also if you can contribute to what you think should be done, because there's an element that there's a journey we have to work together. Brother Coco?
Thank you, brother. As I said, we need to conscientize the masses. We need to educate the people, because the army comes from the people. The leaders that we have, in the end, they come from the people. And if the people have been awakened or decolonized, then we will have an awakened mass. But allow me to also appreciate my sister Tapua, and also the conversations that we have on a weekly basis here, because trust me, by just listening to some of the speakers here, we get educated a lot. Our eyes and ears are opened. We start to see things. Or again, it helps, because if I want to come here and say something, and I have a lot, I cannot cover everything in the space of 5 minutes that I have. But when there are all of us here talking, everyone covering different points, you realize you're all coming up with something that works in the end. So the whole becomes bigger than the sum of the individual parts that we are providing. But before I log off, let me just say, I'm thinking that we are struggling as Africans. We are struggling to realize that we are stronger together. And is that issue of hierarchy which has been brought in amongst us to break the flat egalitarian Ubuntu system in which we lived in. And that is what they are using against us. That's what they're using. The Americans came here with the strongman tactic. They wanted the strongmen to be the counter-revolutionaries, which is what they used against us in the 60s. And that's what they continue to do. And most of what is going on, even in Africa right now, is because everyone wants to be the best. We have to know what the teamwork is. Teamwork doesn't mean we don't all have to be the best. We just have to work together to produce the best result. That's all I'm asking. I'm saying, let's not compete amongst ourselves. Let's learn to collaborate. Let's learn to accept who we are. It doesn't matter how small you bring to the table or how big you bring to the table, but as long as you bring value addition to the table to take us forward, then that should be it. And this is what we need to be doing and working towards a conscientious mass of the people. Then our armies will rise from there, awakened. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Elder Sam.
Brother Pigeon, and I was still writing because Sister Ada was saying time is limited. We must write our questions on the chat. But mine was just a reaction from what you and Brother Kwame was saying about how can you expect training your soldiers in an enemy territory that they will come and be good to you. I think I just wanted to probe that we shouldn't be saying that we cannot dare even go and learn from other people, because as long as the people are trained wherever they are trained, as long as they come home and change us to go into the system of those people and confiscate all our groundings and our norms, we should just go there and learn what is developed developmental in those areas. We shouldn't say we should become an island, or then we'll be Africa, trained only in African affairs, and then we don't know internationally what is happening. Thanks.
Thank you, Brother Mauli.
Okay, so one question: do we have a model of who an African is in terms of the African family?
No.
Who an African is, and there is a pattern I realized. You made mention of how whether our brothers, the Sahel region, will be able to help the other countries if they also follow suit. Nkrumah, as at the time he was fighting for Ghana, other countries we did help. He brought people into Ghana, trained them, and also contributed to other countries' liberation within the continent. When Rawlings was also about to do the takeover, Gaddafi helped him. When this guy, Mandela, was also trying to fight, Nigerians and some of the countries help. You realize that in our African lifestyle, we like helping each other. That is a fact. But at the end of the day, when we put in the efforts and build the momentum to that level where we are about to break even and take our destiny into our hand, they break the front line, and that is it. We are scattered all over again. So the question has to do with what happened. One element of betrayal destroys everything. Now, so to root out all those elements of betrayal, we need to have a model of who an African is. Do we foster our lifestyle towards our culture within, within our own identity? Do we do that? Do we focus on the African identity that's like grows within every fiber of our lifestyle, knowing very well our struggle and what time it is we the Africans find ourselves in, that this is what we need to do consciously. Everybody knows what has to be done and move towards that level. Is it possible to achieve that level of consciousness?
Okay, Brother Maoli, thank you. I hope you will help us also to do that research to get us what you're trying to have a model. But I think you're talking about African personality or African identity. Probably, if you can have to some time, please do for us a small brief document on that. Who is really an African or African identity and personality? We'll be glad to hear from you on what you can find out on that. Sawindok, we are having 2 minutes to go. Please, Sawindok, go ahead.
Greetings and thank you, Brother Pidget. I've joined very late. My network is really, really bad, but I know it has stabilized now. I just wanted to have a comment on neocolonialism.
Okay.
The identification.
Brother Kwame?
Can I proceed?
Yes, brother.
Sawindo, go ahead. I lost you from my side. I think I have a network problem. But Sawindo, go ahead.
Yeah, so the identification there of who is really neocolonialism and what is neocolonialism. Brother Kwame said neocolonialism is a system. Yes, it's true, it is a system, but a system is useless without a driver, without the human resources to get it executed. So in my mind, I'm telling myself that neocolonialism are the leaders, the African leaders, because they are the ones manning the system, they are the ones driving the system. And as Sister Tapoa has said, in Zimbabwe, they are being scared like, if you do this, colonialists will come back. That is the same tactic they are using in Namibia. Look at that insult of them telling us South Africa will come back and colonize us again. How can South Africa colonize us again? So to me, the system is driven by people, and these people are the enemy. They are the neo-colonialists. And time is limited. I will just end there. Further comments, I will take it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Kwame.
Yeah.
Come in, Brother Kwame, tell me
Yeah, I
something.
think yeah, I think Sir Welcome has made a very important point, which Sister Ida also made in terms of the fact that there's when there's bloodshed, Africans get killed. So I think that's an important point that both of them have made, which is that institutions are there, and that is a scientific fact that there's such a thing as an institution. But on the other hand, as Brother Welcome and Sister Ida have pointed out, there is also such a thing as human beings being carriers of those institutional values. So in as much as we are saying neocolonialism is a system, we are also saying that that system is carried in the lives of people, and so yeah, so that is correct. Um, the the when Can I add that when we say that neocolonialism is the enemy, what I think we are really saying is that if you take fish and water, uh, fish cannot exist without water. If you take the fish out of the water, the fish will die. Yeah. So the system is like like the water, yeah, the river, the sea, however you want to put it. And the fish is like the human beings that operate it, yeah, operate in the system and carry the system. The way to kill the fish is to destroy the system. If you destroy the system, then the fish will die automatically. And I think when Nkrumah and others, remember the Pan African Conference in Ghana in 1948, it wasn't it? Was it 48? Yeah, no, not yeah, 48. Oh no, 58. When Nkrumah called the first
58.
58, yes. When Nkrumah called the first Pan African Conference on the continent. You remember that the question that was dealt with in that conference was who is the enemy? And Nkrumah defined it clearly as imperialism. And that's how Nkrumah defined it. The enemy is imperialism. So imperialism is like the river or the sea in which the fish live. And if you destroy the river or the stream or the whatever, then the fish will die. And that is why you can't ask for a change in Africa without institutional change. The only way you can have change in Africa is institutional change. And that's why what Brother Coco said is so poignant, which is that if we want a unified African army, that is an institution, isn't it? But that institution can only arise when there's an African nation. You can't have neo-colonial armies uniting because it's contradictory, isn't it? If you think about it, it's contradictory. How can neo-colonial armies unite? How will a army go to because it's against their logic, isn't it? So the only way you can have an African military, one African military, is to have an African nation. And coming back to the point, brother, the king was making, in terms of identity, which is what you were saying, that is a big T. And so the identity, as Tapua has mentioned, can be confusing. Because when you see a black man who has the same skin tone as you, surely he or she is one of you. But is he? Is she? You see, so we need to clarify what we mean by an African, and that is a whole different topic. And I suppose one way to define what an African is in terms of the nation state. That if we have a new African nation, they are a citizen of that nation. So if an American call him or then they are not African, even though in terms of ethnicity they are African. So there's a lot to say about this, and the time is 5:09. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, comrades, for your time and for your contribution. I think this is something we still have to do a follow-up document a bit on the roadmap towards this, putting in place the challenges you've identified, but also the possible route we have to follow based on the challenges you have. I really want to appreciate everyone who came in on behalf of CSG, your contribution and your time. As Brother Coker said, our listening is also part of educating one another. And we need to create more spaces like this, as Elder Sama said, in our country where many people can join the conversation and have a local chapter to listen to what we talk about. So yes, I think next Saturday is now market integration that we are to do this Saturday. And then we will still be going on to the regular Thursday classes and Tuesday Swahili. And tomorrow, just for information, I'll be hosting the celebration of Kwame Ngugi wa Thiong'o. I think we'll be doing it through the CSG Zoom at around 6 p.m. GMT. So we have an array of all these histories, interviews, talks, and everything else for around 2 hours. Those who might find time, feel free to join us that time. I'll be able to share the link with everyone else. But for today, comrades, thank you for this engaging conversation. I really appreciate what you've done and what you put into this conversation. May you have a lovely evening to all of you. Forward ever.